Hello there. Happy Monday. Hoping this goes out on Monday and I'm not saying this on the wrong day, but welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast. I am Ashley Drummonds, and as always, I'm always excited to have this conversation with you. So I promised you guys that I had an episode coming down the pipeline that was all about building true strength, and I'm a woman of my word. That's exactly what we're going to talk about, is how to build true strength inside and out. The reason I wanted to talk about this, other than it's one of my favorite things to talk about, of mental strength and physical strength, is actually I was inspired to do an episode on true strength because of a recent podcast I was on a couple weeks ago with Strong Fitness Magazine. So those of you who are just now listening to this podcast because you found me through that podcast, I appreciate you coming over and listening in and giving this a shot. And I also appreciate all the kind words and the feedback from that episode, because the intention behind it, as with everything, was really just to inspire you, empower you, and help you believe that anything is possible if you believe in yourself and you're willing to tap in and do the work. So I did this podcast episode with Strong Magazine. So the theme behind it is Find Your Strong. If you didn't listen to it and you want to hear a little bit of the story from going from a personal trainer to building the abs brand, I put the link in my Instagram page so you can go listen to it if you want to. It was a fun time. But anyway, so on this episode, we're going back and forth and we're talking all about the journey. And one of the ways that Jennifer, who's the host of that episode and the owner of Strong Magazine, likes to wrap things up is she always asks the question is, what does strong mean to you? And I actually was surprised by how long of a pause I had to take before I responded to this. And mostly because anytime I respond to anything, it's always very intentional. So I wanted to actually think about what she was asking me and then really see well, what does that really mean to me? And so my response to that was, I think if you would have asked me what strong means to me 10 years ago in my early 20s, it would have been a very different answer. I probably would have said something like being strong is about being a badass and you're physically strong, you're just crushing life and you're always on top and you're a leader and all that, which is part of being strong. But after I thought about it for a second, what I said in response to her was, you know what? These days to me, and through just my own journey and what I feel like you guys probably have with your journey too, being strong to me actually isn't always about being strong. Being strong is more about really embracing every part of yourself, including the flaws and the broken pieces, picking it up and putting it all together, and then choosing to embrace it unapologetically as you move forward in life. And all I really mean by that is it's knowing that you have weak spots. It's using superheroes as an example. Superheroes know they have a kryptonite. That doesn't mean that they're not strong and they're not superheroes. It just means that they've acknowledged their areas that maybe are a little bit weaker, or they've acknowledged areas that are a little broken, put it together and found a way to discover a bigger strength outside of all of that. So I posed a question to you too, if you really thought about it, wherever you are, whatever age you are, is what does being strong actually mean to you? Because it's different for everybody. And as we go through more and more life experiences and life lessons, it changes. Especially for men, I know there's this whole culture behind men being strong and tough and they don't show emotions and vulnerability is a weakness. And they're just lifting heavy weights and always taking care of everybody else and doing all these things, but they're not allowed to show a moment of vulnerability or a moment of weakness. And I've heard this, fortunately, growing up with two brothers and being very close with my dad, we're very close because I'm kind of tomboyish in one sense, but also I am an empathic, intuitive woman. So I'm also sensitive. So hearing things like that from them of just how it's a struggle, feeling they can't ever admit if they're having a hard time, or they can't ever admit hey, I actually need a break. I'm in a struggle right now, or I'm I'm kind of like, I need to just like fall apart. It's always been so interesting to me as just like our society and humans in general, what we define as strength. Like it blows my mind as if like being strong means you have no other emotions or anything outside of just always being perfect and having things put together. And so my purpose in this episode and what I hope you get from this is really like asking yourself that question, discovering for yourself, like, what is your idea behind what a strong woman or strong man looks like? But then starting to question that, like, is that really somebody that I admire and would say is strong? Or is this just an idea I adopted from society? Because in reality, to me, the people that I find as like, God, like I just admire them so much, it's usually the ones that have been through some serious shit in life. Like they have been knocked down. They've got like a huge underdog story. They've been through a lot and they have had to dig deep, find out who they truly are, discover their true strength, and rise above all of that. That to me is what's strong. And it's even like, there's such a beautiful process and transformation when working with clients that I don't want to say it's necessarily that people show up as their weakest self, because I don't believe necessarily like we go through being weak. I think it's more so we forget how strong we really are. So a lot of times when clients first come in to work with me, their confidence is low, they're feeling down on themselves, they're struggling with self-esteem, they have a lot of self-doubt, they no longer believe in who they are, what they can do, and what's possible. Maybe they had some setbacks, or maybe they're just kind of like stuck. Maybe they're stuck in whatever story they're telling themselves. And it's so interesting because part of the thing that keeps us stuck is not accepting the story of where we are because of shame or guilt or being embarrassed by it. So it's like you want to move forward and you want to be your best self and you want to be strong and reach your unlimited potential, but you refuse to accept and acknowledge where you are as if in some way that's not part of your story and journey in becoming your best self. So one of the things I always have people do when they're trying to move forward and they're trying to reach wherever they want to be is accept and acknowledge exactly where you are, like every part of it. Are you like totally depressed, anxious, struggling, like not even exercising, you've let yourself go, whatever it might be? If so, then I need you to quit denying that and pushing that to the side, and I need you to accept that. And then we have a starting point to move forward. But you have to stop telling yourself that one side is either good or bad or strong or weak, and seeing it all as just almost like a mosaic kind of thing. If it's a bunch of broken pieces and we just put it all together and we make it something really beautiful and strong. That's the best way to do it. So we're going to get into some of that today. We're going to share a lot of stories. I'm going to give you a couple things that you can kind of do just to work on building your own physical and mental strength. And most of it is more just like reminding you of things that you already know. So that's what I want to talk about today. I hope you're ready. I hope that you're ready to get inspired, and we're going to dive in. All right, so real quick, as always, if you want to work with me on your nutrition, customized workout program, and really just building a strong mindset, head over to ashleydrummons.com. You will see a lot of the options there. Also, you can just shoot me an email. There's a whole form on there where it says work with me. Head over there, click on that link, and then just shoot me an email and be like, hey, here's who I am, here's where I'm at, and here's where I need some help. And you and I will hop on a call. The link will also be in the description of this episode. But again, it's just ashleydrummons.com. All right, so let's talk about this. So true strength, building true strength mentally and physically, what this means, how do you do it? And you're already doing it, but acknowledging and recognizing it. So I mentioned earlier the podcast with Strong Magazine, and that's what inspired this. And so part of it was she had asked me something along the lines of, what's the hardest thing I've ever had to do? And the preface to that was it getting started in working out when you hadn't been working out? Was it building a business from scratch and not knowing what you're doing? Was it going through a breakup? Was it like buying your first house. What's the hardest thing you've ever had to do? And again, I like paused and really thought about that because, yeah, I mean, workouts are hard. Yes, building a business is hard. Yes, all of these life things are hard, but like, what's really the hardest thing that I've ever had to do? And the truth, the hardest thing I have ever had to do is actually build a relationship with myself. And here's what I mean by that. And I was acknowledging a client over the weekend we've been working together for a year. Actually, yeah, like right around a year. And I was acknowledging the amount of growth that she has gone to. And she's probably listening right now, like, it's me. Yes, it is you. But I was saying that I know how hard the work is mentally and emotionally and physically, and the amount of changes you have to make in your habits, both your thinking patterns and your habits that you do in your everyday life. I know how many times you've cried on our calls, and I've had to remind you, like, it's okay, keep going, you're growing. But the amount of work that it takes to really dig deep and spend time with yourself and break through your patterns and stop telling yourself the same stories and really overcoming limitations, that's the hardest thing you're ever going to do in life. And the people that do that hard work, I appreciate them and I cherish them so freaking much because it is not easy. And 99% of the time you're doing it alone because nobody else can go to those parts of yourself with you. But so the reason this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and it's also the hardest thing you'll ever have to do of truly building a relationship with yourself, is because it forces you to look at the parts that you are trying to keep hidden from the rest of the world. So it's the parts of yourself. If you're into like astrology and all that, this would be your shadow self. So you have the part, your sun rising, you have your shadow. And this really isn't about astrology. It's just because sometimes I like my hippy dippy new age stuff. But so you have your sun self, which is who you present yourself to the world. And then you have your shadow self, which is the part of you that you try to hide and you only let it come out like in isolation when you're alone, but you never actually present it to the world because of shame, embarrassment, or whatever it might be. So in building a relationship and connecting with yourself, it's choosing to bravely go and be a part of that shadow self. And what I mean by the shadow self, it's the parts that you're scared of, that you have refused to accept. It's the parts that other people haven't accepted. It's parts of your story that you haven't fully processed and embraced. And like some of it can go to like childhood trauma. It can be relationship stuff. It can be setbacks. It can be anything. But it's those parts that scare you and terrify you to go to because they are so deep and they feel so heavy and they feel so dark. However, in order to move forward in your life and really become your best self, you have to go there. Otherwise, you're cutting off parts of who you are in a way thinking that it's unacceptable or it's not necessarily like a strong part. But it's like, say you don't like your left arm. You're like, no, my left arm's the weak lean. I don't really like it, so I'm not going to give it attention. What's going to happen to your left arm if you don't acknowledge that you have a weak link? You're working out, you're doing bicep curls, you're only curling with the right arm. You're like, nah, my left one's weak. I don't want to deal with that. Like, it can't lift as much. And you're going through this and you refuse to accept that your left arm is weak. So you refuse to work on it and you only work on the part that you like, your right side. So then what happens? You're lopsided. You look super goofy. Your right arm is like just super strong and muscular and can crush those bicep curls. And your left arm, like, you wear long sleeve shirts because you're embarrassed by it when all you had to do was accept like, hey, it's okay. You got a left arm that's a little bit weaker. Let's work on it and balance it out and then move forward stronger instead of continually to make one part stronger and leave the other one to the side because you're embarrassed by it. You do the same thing with your emotions, with parts of your personality. You have to learn to first spend the time with yourself and go within and embrace these parts. And then once you embrace those parts, what actually happens is you realize, oh, it's not weak at all. What I thought was weak was just because it wasn't accepted by everybody else. And actually, this is one of the strongest things about me. And now I can move forward even stronger because I'm moving forward with my whole self. An example of this, for the longest time, I have always been hypersensitive. Always. Most of my life, I thought that this was weakness. I thought being sensitive and very emotional and deeply connected and empathic, I thought this was something that I needed to fix or I needed to shut off in order to survive in this world because it wasn't normal. Other people weren't feeling as deeply as I was feeling. I would lose a friend in middle school and I would cry for weeks because I felt like I just lost like a family member, and other people would just like move on to the next friendship. Or I'd lose like a cat or like a goldfish and I'm crying for weeks because I was so deeply emotionally connected to this animal. And everybody else is like, why is she still crying about the goldfish that died like 4 months ago? Because I just love it so much. So for so long, I would do this in isolation. It's like, all right, look, I know I'm like super sensitive. I know that I love very deeply. I love people. I love animals. I love experiences. I love very deeply. But it also means that sometimes it ends up hurting very deeply too. So let me learn how to shut this off. I'll build this super strong shield around myself. I'll become so strong and cut off that nothing can affect me that deeply. And what happened is the longer that I did this, there became a point in my life where I felt disconnected. Like no matter, like I would try different jobs or I would try different business paths and there, like all of it was fine. But there was a part of me that felt disconnected. It was like, yeah, I mean, this could work, but it's still like something's missing. It's that feeling of something is missing. Or even in a relationship or in anything where you're like, yeah, no, like it's good, but there's something missing and you can't really pinpoint on it and put your finger on it, but you just know intuitively, you're like, God, it's all there. Like, what is my problem? Nothing's wrong. But there's just like this disconnect. There's disconnect in my friendships, in my relationships, in my work, in what I'm doing. Everything feels like one big disconnect, like I'm going through the motions. The disconnect isn't from what you're doing. The disconnect is from yourself. Because in order to access that thing that does make you feel alive, feel empowered, and feel deeply connected is within you. And once you learn to embrace that and accept that and acknowledge that, then everything you do will change and shift and reflect that. So going back to the story, when I did this for a really long time, that's what it felt like. It was neither good nor bad. It was just like, I don't know. It's like living a life that was just, I don't know, lacklusterless. Like there was no magic in anything. So what ended up happening is eventually, I think when our souls are ready for us to grow, it presents the opportunity where like, you just don't have a choice. Like you cannot continue on this way anymore. You are either going to face your demons and pull all the skeletons out of the closet and we're going to love them and we're going to acknowledge them and you're going to move forward stronger, or you are signing up for a life of just disconnect and going through the motions. And you reach these points and sometimes like, it can manifest of what looks like a rock bottom, or it feels like a huge crisis, or it feels like everything hits you at once. You lose your job, you lose a relationship, you lose your car, you lose your house, whatever. Really all this is life doing you a favor because it's like, all right, aren't you tired of this old skin that no longer fits you? Like you have outgrown this. Let's shed this and let's move forward and grow. So when you do this, you are forced to figure yourself out. It's the process of self-discovery and you're going through the motions that you used to, except for even the motions don't work anymore. And you're like, nothing I'm doing is working. It's not working because you have to go within and discover who this new part of yourself is. So what happens in this process is it's almost, I feel like everybody has had these times. It's almost when you find yourself alone, and I don't mean like you're like living in a desert, literally alone, but most of your world has been changed that you are alone and you have nothing to take up that space to distract you from finding these parts of yourself inside. And you are forced to look at everything. And at first it scares the crap out of you because you're like, no, I don't want to talk about what happened to me when I was 12 years old. That's been locked away. Like, I don't want to go to that deep, dark place. I don't want to go back to that emotional pain, but it's stuff that you've never processed. And in order to be your strongest self, you got to deal with your shit. Like you got to go there and feel everything. And then when you do it, It's literally like, I've used this analogy before. It's like when you go in the dark room and you're scared of it the first 100 times you do it because you think there's a monster under the bed. And then you go in there, you flick the lights on, and you look under the bed and it's a stuffed teddy bear. The parts that you're afraid of the most are just the parts of yourself that want to be acknowledged and brought with you on your journey. So you have to stop denying it. So how do you build true strength inside and out? Well, number one, inside, how do you get stronger when you're working out? You do the hard workouts, right? You do the things that you're not good at. That's how you get stronger. You don't just focus on the things that you're strong at, although that's what most people do, is they're like, no, I suck at pull-ups, so I'm just not going to do them. That's not going to help you get any stronger. It's the same way mentally and emotionally. How are you going to become a stronger person? You go to the spots that you suck at. So what do you suck at? Do you suck at being emotionally open? Do you suck at processing feelings? Do you suck at talking about things that bother you and acknowledging it? Do you suck at standing up for yourself? Like, where are your mentally weak spots? Because it actually has been scientifically proven that our mental and emotional muscles are just like our physical muscles, in that the more and more we do something over and over, the stronger that emotional or mental muscle becomes. So kind of like when you're stepping outside your comfort zone for the first time, you might have a full-on anxiety attack because your brain is like, holy crap, we can't do this. Remember that one time you did this in 6th grade? Or remember when you did this at 21 years old and you totally got rejected and burned? Your brain freaks out. It's just like the first time you go to do a workout, your brain is freaking out and you get that pre-workout anxiety, not because you took pre-workout, but because you're freaking out about how hard the workout's going to be. Same thing happens. However, what do? You do it, you don't die, and you're like, okay, that wasn't as terrible as I thought. Yes, I was having heart palpitations and I was having sweaty palms and every part of me felt so uncomfortable, but it's okay. And then you'll do it again. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. And then before you know it, like, you've done it so many times, it doesn't even faze you. But the only way you ever get there is you have to be willing to do it the first time. So with building inner strength mentally and emotionally, you're only as strong as your weakest part. And again, I don't like calling it weak because it's not weak. It's just a part that hasn't been given as much attention. Using the physical analogy, if you are not squatting, your legs probably are your weakest part. You don't ignore them and only do upper body. You have to balance out your entire body, and inevitably, your whole body is going to end up getting stronger. One, because our legs produce the most amount of testosterone and human growth hormones when we exercise them. But two, it's the biggest part of your body. You can't ignore it. So if you've been going through life, your heart. Let's talk about your emotional heart. Your heart is the biggest part of your life. It guides you. It initiates emotions. It tells you when something is off or to listen to your intuition and something is on. But if you haven't listened in a really long time, that's probably a weak spot for you. And then you end up in the place where you're like, I'm confused. I don't know what my intuition feels like. Yes, you do. You're just not listening to it. And the way you strengthen that is little by little, you do little steps where you learn to trust yourself and you learn to listen to that again. And I was talking to somebody else about this recently, about rebuilding your strength muscle in trusting yourself, that you can't it doesn't just happen overnight. You don't just wake up one day and decide like, all right, I'm going to just like totally deal with everything that I need to emotionally. I'm going to just jump off this cliff and go for every dream that I have. And I'm going to open up my heart to the entire world. It doesn't work that way. And you trying to do that is the equivalent of you stepping into like a powerlifting competition when you've never lifted a weight in your entire life. Like, it's not going to happen. You're probably going to hurt yourself. And then in hurting yourself, you're going to further validate the belief of like, see, I knew that was going to happen. I can't do it. No, you can. Just look at the big picture in the long run. So doing this physically and mentally, or I guess emotionally, mental, emotional, tomato, tomato, it's the same thing. Doing this mentally and emotionally, how can you do this and slowly build that up and learning to trust yourself and strengthen that and prove to yourself like, hey, it's okay. This is getting stronger. I'm getting better at this. Well, going back to the example that I was giving of how like sensitivity, being empathic, being intuitive, being a very big feeler, all these things that I used to see as a weakness, how did I slowly start to embrace that? And now I'm just talking to you guys all day about my intuition and crazy dreams and follow your heart and believe in yourself. I didn't jump from one thing to the next. It was baby steps. So I started sharing a little bit more with people that I trusted. I started doing little things. It's really hard. Listen, our society doesn't really respond well to people showing feelings. It's not your fault. It is not your fault. Everybody's walking around totally cut off from themselves. So if you walk forward and you're like, you know what? I just want to tell you, like, you're a fantastic person and I care about you so much. And I just want you to know, like, I think you can do anything. I think you're awesome and whatever. Most people would look at you like you're nuts and then probably go in their car and cry alone because they're like, oh my God, that impacted me so much. But God forbid that they actually show any emotional response to what you just said. So then we create this entire society where you put yourself out there to share with this person and you're like, I'm going to embrace my feelings and who I really am. And you do it. But this person that you do it to isn't brave enough yet to respond emotionally. So then they act like you're nuts and go away and do it alone in isolation. Because they act like they're nuts, you're now like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that again because that is not the response that I wanted. And then it creates a domino effect. So to avoid that, how you practice building the strength, now that I've gone on so many rabbit trails, you do it first with yourself. And it's like what you see in movies where they're doing like self-talk and they're like, you've got this. Like, you know what? We're going to go in there. This is what we're going to say. It's going to be totally fine. No big deal. We might really just like face plant this emotionally and get complete rejection, but that's okay because that's not the point. This is just an exercise. We just want to prove to ourselves if we can get it done. That's how you approach it. You think of it like this is just like a homework assignment. Like I actually am not looking for any results. I have zero expectation on the response that I get and no outcome. I'm just proving to myself that I am strong enough and brave enough that I can do this. And then you do it totally for yourself and the response doesn't matter. Sometimes you get bonus points and what happens is the response you get actually helps you validate like, oh, hey, look, somebody actually appreciated that I did that. I can do that again. And then over and over, the more you do it again, the more you build that inner strength and that inner muscle. Most of the time what happens is you don't get the response that you want, but it doesn't matter. You walk away because you did it for yourself and you're like, okay, cool. It's not that scary. I can do that. I can step outside my comfort zone and share vulnerability and lead with my heart, even if I don't get the response. And it further and further puts your power and your focus and your energy back on yourself instead of doing everything looking for approval or validation outside yourself. So hopefully that makes sense. And like a lot of times when I'm working with clients and we're going through this, like say they're not used to asserting themselves. People pleasers. I am not a people pleaser at all. I know plenty of people who are people pleasers, but you're somebody that you're so scared to say no. You're scared to say no because you don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings. And then you start to play the card of like, well, yeah, but I know that they can't. They don't have anybody else. In the meantime, you say yes to something that you really mean no to, and you end up resentful, tired, drained, and depleted. You get sick, and then you got to take like a 12-week vacation because all you've been doing is saying yes every time you mean to say no. So we practice saying no in baby steps. You go to the store. Did you want plastic for that? No. Oh my God, no is so empowering. No, I don't want that. What I would like is paper. Okay, great. You go to a restaurant. Hey, how's your meal? Is it everything that you wanted? No, actually, the steak was a little bit overcooked, just FYI. Oh, we didn't know that. Anything you do, just practice saying no. Practice saying the opposite of what you think is going to get you approval so you can build your resiliency muscle in not needing everybody to accept and love and validate who you are. So this is how we start to build inner strength. It's almost like every time somebody doesn't accept you or approve of you or give you what you want, you can thank them. You're like, wow, thank you so much for making me numb to needing any kind of approval whatsoever, because now I'm not scared of this process at all. And you learn to validate and love yourself. So going on to then physical strength, I also had to explain this to somebody else last weekend. Physical strength happens very quickly when you're brand new to it. Every growth that you do happens really quickly when you're brand new. Whether you're growing a business, you're growing a relationship, you're growing, I don't know, emotionally, physically, because you're so excited about it. Like when you first fall in love, you are so excited that you're just building such a fast, strong connection. But then what happens? A year in and you're like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm kind of bored. And not saying that that's not right sometimes, but it's just, we build everything very fast in the beginning. So building physical strength, you start out, you've got your split routine, you're doing legs, upper body, I don't know, total body and abs 4 days a week. The first 6 months you do this, you are getting strong and shredded. Then what happens? You kind of plateau because you're not actually pushing yourself outside of your comfort zones anymore. All you've done is you hit a threshold. You decided for 6 months, like, all right, I'm getting in shape. You broke that threshold. And then after going through the motions for 6 months, you've now built a new threshold. You have to continually be willing to put yourself outside of the comfort zone. So this is why usually with fitness, I'm not a gym hopper, but I am a gym hopper. Because the different gym environments I'm in, it forces me to be uncomfortable and not know exactly where each thing is. But also, I'm around other people that are doing different things. I'll also go from doing powerlifting to then Olympic lifting, to then bodybuilding, to then CrossFit, to then athletic conditioning. Because I don't want my body to get used to what it's always doing. Same thing with books. I go from reading something that's just all about like food and fitness to then I'm learning all about lucid dreaming and astrology, to then something with quantum physics, to like just bouncing all over, because the more variety you can add in your life, the less you get used to being in a comfort zone. Go to a new coffee shop, go to a new grocery store, take a different road to work, whatever it is. Every time you do that, you are strengthening your ability to be uncomfortable, which means you are more likely to take risk in all areas of your life in order to have the life that you want. So what you can do to like literally, like, here's action items, because every person I've ever worked with likes action items. Like, what's my homework? What should I do? What you can do to start building physical and mental strength in your own life is think about areas right now that you're playing it safe. I don't care what it is. Think about areas that you are staying within your comfort zone. Things are real cozy and familiar. You're not really unhappy, but deep down you also know like something's missing. Think about these areas, like just write them out, like your top 3. Don't get crazy and make a list of 20. If it's like 20, you probably just need like a whole, like, look, just, you need to just like let go of everything. If it's 20, move. You need to just like up and move, like live somewhere new, make some new friends, get in a new environment, get a new job, like all of it. Just wipe the slate clean and then rebuild. You'll be fine. You'll be better for it. So think of like the top 3 things where maybe you're playing it safe. Maybe it's friendships. Maybe you're holding on to some friendships that you really don't have anything in common with. They're not helping you grow. It's not like there's some deep connection there. You literally are just taking up space. That's all these friendships are. They serve no purpose other than, well, it's better than being alone. Is it? Because what's happening is there may be other friendships that can better fulfill you and help you grow, but you're too busy being scared of opening up that space simply out of fear of loneliness. So think about that. Maybe your friendships are playing it safe. Maybe it's in your job. Maybe your job isn't really your dream and you've been doing it for so long, but you're scared to death of, if I quit this though and do what I actually want to do, how am I going to make any money? Or, oh my God, I don't actually know how to do anything else, but I want to do something else. However, this is just what I've gotten really good at. There's a great book called The Big Leap. It's all about how every single one of us has different zones. We have zones of what we're good at. We have zones of excellence. And then we have our zone of genius. Our zone of genius is where very few people discover their true path and their purpose in life, because it really requires you to step way outside of your comfort zone. And what happens is so many of us find our zone of where we're good and our zone of excellence that we never actually discover our zone of genius, because we've gotten so comfortable with excellence, which doesn't sound bad, and it's not bad. But the whole book, it's really good. I think, no, that's a different book. I don't remember who the author is, but it's called The Big Leap. And on the front cover, it's like a goldfish jumping in a fishbowl. He's either jumping in the fishbowl or out of the fishbowl. But basically, it's stepping outside your comfort zone, knowing that you have a zone of genius. And when you tap into that zone of genius, everything in your life clicks. It's something that comes so natural and so easy to you, almost too easy that you're like, no way is this like what I'm meant to do. But you get stuck in a zone of good or a zone of excellence that you haven't really stepped outside your comfort zone because it's not bad. And he talks about this too with relationships and friendships. We find our friendships and our relationships that are good and they're excellent. But then there's the people that like, man, you just cannot mimic or recreate the connection, the growth, the whatever it is. So you have these different zones. If you've never read it, it's a really great book for stepping outside your comfort zone, discovering your true path and purpose, and learning the skills to build resiliency and inner strength to take those big leaps and those big risks in your life. So you can do this. You can just write it out, like the top 3 things. Actually, you can do this mentally and physically. So your top 3 things in your emotional mental place, where maybe you're playing it safe, you're in your comfort zone. Like I said, you can do jobs, friendships, relationships, money, doesn't really matter. And then you can do the top 3 things with your workouts where maybe you're playing it safe, that you're scared of. Maybe you are scared to go do leg day. Maybe you are scared to go do athletic conditioning. Maybe you are scared to try a different way of working out because you never done it. Whatever it is, you write out these top 3 things, and then you ask yourself, whatever one is easier for you. And I'll give you an example. If this is like a hard exercise for you, I'll make this really easy for you. You can find the theme in your life real fast by doing this. We'll go workouts. Once you discover your 3 things, ask yourself, what is it that you're scared of? Like, what's keeping you from trying this? You ask like simple questions like that and you're like, I don't know, I've just never done it. Okay. But then why? Well, because I don't know how to do it. Okay. Then why? And you keep asking the question and you go further and further. And eventually what you'll get is you'll hit that chord where you're like, and there is the big problem in my life. This is my life theme right now. And then you probably don't even have to do it for the mental and emotional side because you discovered in the physical side. It's like, oh, if I start doing this in all areas of my life, then I'd probably change a whole lot of things. And here's the example. So 3 or 4 months ago, so you guys remember I told you I have the PR, the back squat PR of like 30 pounds. I still have that goal. That's my goal. I have hit, let me think about the numbers here. So I've done 15. Yeah. So I had a 15-pound PR in the pursuit of this goal, which those of you who have been working out for a long time, 15 pounds in 6 months is very fast when you've been doing this for a long time. It's hard to get a 5-pound PR. So I'm still continuing to work on that goal. And part of this is a few months ago, I put my full PR weight on the bar and I was doing quarter squats with it just to get used to the weight. So the central nervous system, aka your mind, will immediately let you know where your physical limitations are. So if that weight's on the bar and I've never done that, my central nervous system is going to freak out and be like, hey, we don't know how to hold this much weight. So you practice with like little movements, and sometimes like I have clients do this where they just put the heavier weight on the bar and they just unrack, hold it and brace and re-rack. That's it. They don't even do the movement because they first have to mentally get their mind and central nervous system to the point of even knowing that the body can handle that amount of weight. So a couple months ago, this weight is on the bar and it's racked up and it's so stupid. Like it's not stupid because we all do this, but I'm just like, God, this is crazy. Like what your mind does. So I have the safety bars up and the safety bars are probably my shoulder height. So very small little squat down and I'm not even squatting it back up. The PR's on the bar. All I got to do is put it on my back and just reach the safety bars and then let the weight rest there. That's it. Just to get my central nervous system up. So the weight's on the bar and this guy is helping me do this. He's like, all right, here you go. It took me like 10 minutes. I'm staring at this weight and I'm like fidgeting. He's like, what's the problem? And I'm like, I'm scared. He's like, well, why are you scared? I was like, because I've never done that weight before. He's like, okay, what are you scared of though? I was like, what if I can't do it? He's like, what if you can't do it? Well, I don't know. He's like, no, really, like, let's get to this. Like, what if you can't do that weight? You're going to go to stand it up. You can't stand it up. Like, what? Nothing's going to happen to you physically. And I was like, well, then it means I failed. He's like, you failed at what? I was like, I failed at doing something. He's like, you've never done it. Of course, you're going to have to like figure out how to do this and you're going to have to get stronger. And we go back and forth. It's like this whole 10-minute conversation, which would make so much sense if I was actually full on squatting the weight, but I wasn't. I just pick it up off the rack and then set it on the safety bar that's like 3 inches from your shoulders. And I had like full on like fidgety. I'm like pacing. I'm like, okay, all right, I can do this. He's like, no, I really want to know, like, what is it that you're really scared of? And I was like, I'm scared of, I've always been able to do anything that I set my mind to. And I'm scared that if I do this, and I can't do this, and I end up like not being able to even like stand the weight up off the rack, that it means that I'm failing. And I like, as soon as I said it, I realized like I verbalized it and I was like, this is stupid. Like, just go try. Who cares? But I saw like this entire theme in my life, like flashing before my eyes. I was like, oh my God, I have been doing this in everything. I have been playing it safe in everything because I got knocked down a few times and some things didn't work out. So I've been doing the same things over and over. Like I'm pushing myself, but I'm only pushing myself to the point that my brain's not going to freak out scared. And this stupid back squat exercise triggered like the deeper fear of like, okay, it's been a long time since I have felt this scared. And all this back squat is representing is my deeper emotional and mental fears around doing anything in my life that scares me. So what happened is I ended up doing it and it was totally fine. I rested the bar on the safety bar racks and like walked away. Like that was so ridiculous. The story that I was telling myself around such a simple exercise. But when we've got stuff that we've been through that has that deep of like emotional triggers and pains, it's kind of like when you burn yourself on the stove, you might be a little gun shy ever using the stove again because it hurt. So you can find out what the theme is in your life right now. Forget about what I said about the first 3 with the mental stuff. Just do the physical stuff. Where in your workouts are you playing it safe? Where in your food are you playing it safe? Where in your like, are you not hiring a personal trainer because you're scared a personal trainer is going to push you and make you step outside your comfort zones and hold you accountable? Why does that scare you? Ask yourself these questions. Are you purposely not doing certain exercises or not trying different forms because you're scared you're going to look a certain way? You're scared you're going to look like you're out of shape or you're going to look stupid or like you don't know what you're doing? Do you also do that in other areas of your life? Where you always try to look put together and have it all figured out? This is why I love fitness so much, because you can discover real fast your emotional and mental limitations every single time you step into a workout. If you are going through the motions, doing the same things every single day in your routine, unwilling to step outside your comfort zone, you're probably doing the exact same thing in every other area of your life. In order to change that, in order to become somebody who is mentally and physically strong, you got to be willing to do the mental work too, not just the physical stuff. There's so many people who are so physically strong, yet the second they have like an emotional trigger, they're so weak. They're so weak because there's been no attention on that. And my brothers used to make fun of me for this. Well, not make fun of me, but when I was younger, even like in high school and like probably early college, they would always, because I always met guys at the gym just because that was where, I mean, that's what I did. I loved the gym. And I was not emotionally mature enough to even know anything about like a guy that's mature or not mature or self-aware or whatever. And I would date these guys and it was like this pattern that then they'd either like cheat or they end up being like assholes and all this stuff. And my brothers are like, why do you date these guys who are like massively strong, but so emotionally and mentally weak? And I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I never even realized that. But like that little light bulb, it's so true. Like it's because our society puts such an emphasis on external things, on external beauty, on external everything, that then you find out everybody is like a ghost or a shell of a person inside because they've given no attention to their actual mental and emotional self. It's just been all physical. So don't do that. Do not be somebody that looks fantastic on the outside, but deep down, you feel disconnected. You have no idea who you truly are. You've cut off parts of yourself. And if you are in that place that you are that, then choose to make the change. Let it all come out and then embrace yourself moving forward wholly so that whether you're physically strong or not, you have something much deeper inside of you that is a lot stronger than anything else out there. Because when you learn to tap into your own strength mentally, everything else becomes easy because you realize no setback, no rejection, nothing that happens outside of you can totally crush you because of the work you've done inside of you. And I know I said this in another episode that there's nothing outside of you that's stronger than what's inside of you. The problem is if you put more emphasis externally than internally, it will always feel that way. It will feel like every time life is disrupted, every time a friendship ends, every time a relationship ends, every time your finances change, every time something changes outside of you, it will always have power over what's inside of you because you are putting all of your energy and focus on that. When you learn to flip it, nothing outside of you can shake you. And it doesn't mean that you're like numb or detached. It's actually quite the opposite. You become deeply connected to yourself, that you realize that everything around you is just a reflection of what's inside of you. And that's really true strength. That is somebody to me who is strong, where no matter what gets thrown at them, they aren't afraid. It doesn't mean that you don't feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that you don't get totally lost and sometimes you're clueless and you have no idea what to do. But it does mean that you have discovered where your power lies, where your strength is at, and it's inside of you, and that no matter what happens outside yourself, you will pick up the pieces, you will put everything back together even better than it was before, and you will move forward. But the only way you will ever discover how strong you really are inside is to build a relationship and spend time with yourself, especially, and I would like bold, underline, italics, and highlight this if it were in a book, especially the parts that scare you the most. The parts that you hide, not just from everybody else, but the parts that you hide from yourself. When you learn to see that as like one of your greatest strengths, that's when you become unstoppable. That's when you can do anything. And going back to men, I mean, you know how many, like, it's crazy. The amount of men, I'm talking about men that I've worked with, like in their workouts, men that I've known in my family, the stuff you read everywhere that struggle with anxiety, with depression, with low self-esteem. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them, but it's because they feel totally alone and isolated because they have feelings, because they're sensitive creatures, because they really just want connection. But in order to have connection, they don't actually know how to express that without being rejected by society's idea of what a man, quote unquote, is and isn't. It's the same thing with women too. On the flip side, like women are accepted as emotional beings, but for so long, and thank God this is all changing, if a woman was strong and assertive and independent and all this stuff, she was deemed too much of a man, or she was deemed as a bitch, or she was deemed as like, I don't even know what. Like, who decides this stuff? Nobody. Nobody decides this but you. So you have to decide for yourself. I know I've talked about a manifesto. What does being a strong woman or a strong man mean to you? Because I am sure that it isn't somebody who cuts off these different parts. It's somebody who embraces that, is deeply connected to who they are. They own every part of their story, every part of who they are, and they move that forward in the world unapologetically. That's somebody who's strong. I mean, the people that I love the most, they're super weird and quirky in the best way possible. And the reason I love them so much is because they know exactly who they are and they're not hiding it. I mean, like, seriously, think about that. Think about the people that you love the most. Why do you love them? Is it because they're perfect? No, it's because they know they've got some weird stuff. And I'm so grateful for the friends that I do have. Because when I get like the part of me that's got PTSD from abandonment issues, when I get needy and I'm like, hey, I'm getting kind of needy. I think it's the PTSD flaring up from being scared of being abandoned. I just want to make sure, are we good? Are we still friends? That when that flares up, I just throw it out there and embrace it. And they laugh at me. They're like, yeah, we're good. You can tell little PTSD Ashley, like, I'm not going anywhere. But you know what? Like, just own every part of you. To wrap all this up, if you want to build true physical and mental strength, first spend the time with yourself, get to know the parts of yourself that you think are weak or that you think are unaccepted, and then make the commitment to yourself of like, you know what, actually, I'm going to see this as a strength. I'm going to see this as an opportunity for me to change the world, for me to change and make an impact. Because the truth is, you're not the only person who feels the way that you do about whatever you think is weak. There are millions of other people. So maybe you can take that weakness and turn it into a strength, and then you can impact other people by doing it. You can empower other people to be weird. You can empower other people to be emotional and vulnerable. So spend time with yourself. Find out the areas where you're playing it safe. See if the story that you are telling yourself about that isn't in some way a recurring theme in your life. And then you have the opportunity to make a choice. You have the opportunity to continue to move forward now that you've seen it on paper, doing the same things and telling that same story and limiting yourself. Or you have the chance to make the decision to change. Even though you know it's going to be hard, you're strong enough to do hard things. You can do hard things. It's just uncomfortable for a little bit. Do the hard things, rise up, grow, and decide to become stronger physically and mentally in your life so that you can really live a life that feels more connected. All right, 45 minutes, that's enough time. If you have not subscribed, be sure to subscribe. I promise I will be coming out with more episodes every single week. This year has been so freaking busy, not just for me. I know it's been that way for a lot of people. So subscribe, as I will have more episodes coming out. And if you do want to work with me directly one-on-one as your mindset, nutrition, and fitness coach, go to ashleydrummons.com and shoot me an email, and we will talk about how to help you hit your goals. Other than that, have a fantastic week. Go do the hard work, and I'll see you in the next episode.